but I digress. Let's move on to imperialism and look at some of the effects here. First, understand something. I don't know why you guys are chatty. Understand something. There were several reasons to establish colonies due to the industrial age. The first one were new markets, and the second one, natural resources. The third were outposts. Firstly, let's talk new markets. Technology allows us to produce more of something than ever before at a better quality for a cheaper cost. This means that for us to continue to grow our profits, we need to find other people to buy our goods. And so the British, as well as the other European powers, Russia, France, etc., would move their ships across the world seeking new places in order to trade, oftentimes with violence. Great example of that was forcing Japan to open its ports under Commodore Matthew Perry, which was an American attempt. Basically, they were an isolated country. We sent in our flotilla of ships, forced them to open their ports, and basically started this age of imperialism there, making them buy our products and from no one else. Furthermore, we can also look at the Opium War. There's a series of wars fought over opium with China. Essentially what happened was this. The British went to India, and there they found a crop which was a drug that was incredibly addictive. It was so addictive, in fact, that if you look at all the other types of drugs that were abused during the era, the only one that comes close to being near so bad as alcohol. And let's face it, it's still utilized extensively today. Opium can be made and refined in all kinds of different products, everything from morphine to heroin. So it's incredibly addictive, as you can imagine. And from a business standpoint, that's great. Think about it. If you're selling drugs, you want your clientele to be addicted, because they have no choice but to buy from you, buy more at a more expensive price. It's great, huh? Is it moral? But as you're going to see, morality doesn't play a role in a lot of decisions made by the Europeans during this era. So basically what happened was it spread to China and became such a prevalent problem that the emperor basically told Britain, stop bringing it in or else. And Britain's like, come at me, bro. Please understand it's more complicated. That's not exactly what happened. There's no emperor of China who's like, standing up from his throne being like, what? That never happened. But what does happen is a war breaks out, China's defeated, and basically forced to accept a lot of rights we're not going to get into, such as the right of extraterritoriality. But I digress. What ends up happening, though, is it's another example of Britain trying to push new markets. Okay. Another reason is natural resources. Britain basically ran out of natural resources during the Industrial Revolution, the most important of which was coal and iron specifically. And they needed these from other places. So basically they went to other countries and started stealing their resources. Everywhere from the Congo, although technically that was Belgium, throughout South America, all over the place, basically. Well, that's not circles, not so much South America, but really Central America. The whole idea was to get resources. Take Hawaii. Why did we get Hawaii as a state? United States. Anyone know that story? Basically, we wanted sugar. If you look at the United States, there's not whole lot of areas you can grow sugar in. You kind of need that tropic region there. So we sold Hawaii. Yeah, basically. What's that? Oh, Kentucky had been a while ago. Originally farmland. Not so much tobacco as a cash crop, though. Certainly that was one of them. We'll get to that here in a second. And that's some examples. But the third point is outposts. You have to understand, in us for it to for steamships to be effective, they have to be able to resupply their full of water. They can't go all over the place all the time without restocking things like that. And here's the deal. The Pacific Ocean's a big thing. Getting across it's really tricky. So basically there's this idea of gathering all these islands to basically act like gas stations so we can refuel our ships. So it's forming this network. Australia was originally taken for this reason. Now what was interesting is a lot of these places had people living there already. You know, we've dealt with the native situation before. Some of them were peaceful, and usually those were destroyed, crushed, and some of them were warlike. And they were kind of treated with more deference. A great example of that is the Maori, these guys. They were they were barbarians, from the saying the word. These are guys who were not European uncivilized, but they beat the crap out of the British. The British, all their new technology, things like that, the Maori gave them what for. Maori were a warrior culture. Basically, they valued warfare, partially because of the cultural idea of what's called mana, which basically meant sort of like personal honor mixed with like life energy. It's kind of an interesting concept. The idea is that one gains mana through doing great deeds, whether it be helping a neighbor build a house or killing an enemy in battle. And warfare tend to be the best chances to gain mana. And what's interesting is that this mana wasn't just yours; it was shared with your family and your relatives going down generations. So basically, it built upon itself, and you could actually steal mana from an enemy by eating part of them. So they were also cannibals.
Cute.
Yeah, there's a gesture that's common in Maori art, where basically it looks like a kid sticking their tongue out, basically, like that. What it means is, I'm going to eat you. I can't wait to taste you. You got to have me a manwich. And they were pretty brutal warriors. The tattooing you might have noticed on their face, they actually had intricate tattoos all over their bodies, which you would gain a tattoo, yes, on their face. If actually some individuals from our culture still do it. It's very painful. Yeah. They do like spam, from my understanding. Spam you can't, It actually is very healthy for you, actually. It's funny. People have this idea about spam. It's actually one of the leanest, best meats you can possibly have. Anyways, we're not talking about spam. But the idea though was that you start with smaller tattoos and they would grow the more you did in society. So like there'd be some dudes who are like covered head to toe with these elaborate tattoos. And if you saw a dude like that, it's like, ooh, that guy's got mad props. But anyways, it's a kind of serious business, right? So Maori, right, another indigenous peoples or aborigines. One thing interesting about Australia, though, Australia, as I said, was originally set up as one of these outposts, but eventually the whole idea of capital punishment came into question. During the Victorian era, the idea of killing someone for committing a crime was starting to be seen as immoral. Consider this. What's the point? Why kill somebody? That's generally why, it was part of a code of justice. It's revenge. But vengeance is not justice. And so the idea here was, and to be perfectly honest, vengeance isn't the only reason to kill somebody. Well, it's not the only reason why we like to say kill murderers and things like that. What's the other reason could you think of? Yeah. Self-defense? I mean by the government, sorry. Like the government, like executing somebody, capital punishment. Sorry? Equalize the economy? Is that what you said, sir? No, not really. Think about it this way. Well, that's getting to an idea. Like, for instance, if we want to show everyone else in society this is why you don't commit this crime. Sorry? Yeah, basically. If you do this, this is what happens. Scare you so you don't do it, right? That only works though if it's a particularly gruesome death, though, right? So they did that in the Middle Ages. They like saw dudes in half while they're still alive. If you're lucky, they'll start at your head. Yeah. Put you upside down and start sawing from the crotch down, and you can feel every single cut until they get into your brain. Yeah. But is it effective if you do that? The answer is no. It just means people don't want to get caught. So crimes were like, you might abduct somebody, yet you kill them so they can't tell who you are. That's why there are certain crimes that don't punish with death. Ultimately, the idea behind the death penalty is to remove somebody from the general population forever. They're no longer a threat to society. That's why we put people in prison in the first place, to remove them from the streets. But, again, it's not terribly effective. That's not very good. We talked about that in sociology. Instead, let's have a look at what the alternative to capital punishment is. How can we remove somebody and not have to deal with them anymore? The idea here is we'll send them to a penal colony. Basically, a colony that is a jail. We'll just basically deport you forever. You can't come back. Australia was being used as a penal colony. So you guys might be like, yeah, I go to Australia. I'm not talking about Eastern Australia, where it's nice and tropical. We're talking about Western Australia, where it's the desert. You can survive there, sure. It's just you're not going to be real happy about it. Australia is the most arid continent on the earth. It's like, eastern part's kind of nice, western part's desert, like Sahara Desert. It's no good. There's lots of kangaroos. It's kind of cool. But, I'm going to get me a pet wallaby, and we're going to go hide in our nest. That's what happens. But this is the idea, was to try to do the same thing as capital punishment, but without actually having murder. Which brings us to the point, does that mean Australia is a bunch of criminals? Well, no, not exactly. You see, there was also a lot of other folks moving there for other reasons, to set up a colony, to set up this outpost type thing like that. It was just a way of sending people who were less desirable somewhere else. And by the way, you could be sent to Australia for a lot of things, not just like killing dudes. For instance, if you were in debt and refused or couldn't pay your debts, you went to jail forever. Let's talk secret ballot for a second. Politically speaking, this became a thing in Britain around this time. You guys know what a secret ballot is? You guys know what a ballot is? Okay. It's a ballot that's secret. Yes, it is. Let's talk for a second. If I was, going to reach into my desk and pull out some ice cream, I'd be really gross, never mind. If I was going to say, okay, let's go and get some ice cream right now, how many guys would be like, yeah, I want some ice cream right now? Boom. How many guys would rather have, like, cake? Pie? It's all good stuff. All right, everyone put your heads on your desk. Everyone heads down on your desk. Make heads upset then. No beatsies. How do y'all think someone in this classroom is a loser? Harsh. All right, hands down. Heads up. All right. First example I gave you, we call an open ballot. Everybody could see everybody else voting. Everybody knew who was going for ice cream or cake or whatever. I just stood with your heads down. That's what we call a secret ballot. Nobody knows who is voting what way. Why would that be a good thing?
That way.
Call me a loser, bro? Come over and say it to my fist. That is an example of why we want secret ballots. So that no one can come after you because of what you vote. It's to keep everybody honest. They will vote how they want.
How many hands went up? I'm really raising the point for the question. Do you vote for president? No, I didn't vote. I didn't have to know. No.
Anyways, that's secret ballot.
No.
It keeps you from having reprisals against you. Alright, here we go. Home rule. One of the things we have to understand about how colonies were run is ultimately one country is going to be ruled by somebody who was way away, a whole other country. And other folks in Central America who were being ruled by somebody thousands of miles across the side of the world, yeah? It's called absentee landlords. For instance, in Ireland, almost all the land was owned by English lords who didn't actually live in Ireland. They lived in London, places like that. So basically what happened was, if you're an Irish farmer, you grew your crops, and you had to grow enough crops to not only feed yourself and your family, but also to have enough left over that you could sell in order that you could pay your landlord for rent. Okay? Now the problem whenever the crops do well, except for the fact that for about 3 years, the main staple crop of Ireland, which is potatoes, encountered a blight. Or a blight, yeah.
So, home rule is when the person lives in the country or does?
It's home within the country, yeah. So the idea here was the crops were dying off, and there wasn't enough food to go around. A grand total of a little bit over 1 million Irish died of starvation. Another million ended up fleeing Ireland and immigrating to other countries like the United States for the purpose of finding a living. Many were sent to Australia for failing to be able to pay their debts.
That's happily married.
What's really kind of crazy was that not real sure. There's lots of stories of people, but I will say this: it was a pretty bad situation. The reason it got so bad is the Irish were actually exporting tons of food. Like, they were exporting more food than any other country that was associated with the United Kingdom. They were sort of the UK's breadbasket. So they're exporting food when they are starving to death. What's really messed up is you had some food that would be shipped to London, and another ship would load up with other food and go back to Ireland. There wasn't a lot of support for the Irish in Parliament. The absentee landlords, who were supposed to be careful, was like, well, they're just exaggerating. It's not as bad as all that. They didn't know how bad it was. So due to mismanagement, people were dying. You can imagine why the Irish are kind of pissed off. Add to this the fact that they can't rule themselves. They don't even have a choice who their leaders are. It leads to a revolution. It fails. Britain suppresses Ireland again. But the thing is they're starting to get some support out of this. We'll get to that later. All right, the last point. Manifest destiny. Manifest destiny was an American concept, more or less. It comes out of the Revolutionary War. The idea was that it was God's will that America stretched from sea to shining sea, that all of America is going to be ours. Now, the problem is there's Indians there. The Indians, guys with bows and arrows. And, all this land is, they're kind of there, but it's really America's land. That's what manifest destiny. And so the idea was we're going to conquer it all. And so initially this meant settling the East Coast, then the West Coast, and they built a railroad connecting the two. make a giant letter H, and then they just sort of started spreading out. And this meant moving Native Americans around, mass exterminations of people. Thousands died, intentionally and due to neglect. Think about it. The nation of Cherokee was moved from an area that was basically in northern Georgia, if memory serves, to Florida. I'm not talking like the nice parts of Florida. I'm talking like the Everglades. So it was no good, and the situation was pretty bad. And as we look at the morality of it, it seems really terrible. But you have to understand some of the concepts that were popular at the time, which we'll be getting to in the next slide. So, everybody get this okay? Because we're going to move on to the next section. Isn't that exciting? We're already done with that one. Oops. '19th century progress. All right. Let's talk Charles Darwin. Who was he? He was a great writer, is he? He did write a book. It was kind of popular. But what's the thing he can? Yeah, he's a pretty interesting guy. What is Charles Darwin famous for? Yeah, the theory of evolution. What is the theory of evolution? Man came from apes. Interesting. Let's say that is not what the theory of evolution states at all. The theory of evolution goes like this. First of all, do you guys understand what I mean when I say natural selection?
Yeah.
You guys know what I mean by artificial selection? Let's talk about those two differences then. Starting with, what do we mean by selection? Let me ask you guys a question. How do you guys have dogs? What kind of dogs you got? What? Beagle?
Oh, wait, what kind of beagle?
What's that? Yeah, what kind?
Oh, German Shepherd, Pitbull, and Cat.
A what?
Cavalier.
A what? Yeah, what's the cat?
Cavalier.
What is a cavalier? All right. Someone else had a multi-food.
I had an English Mastiff.
Where do all dogs come from? Jesus. Jesus said, "Let there be dogs," and there was much wolves. Yeah. Cats. No, they're all wolves. Yeah. Let's talk dogs for a second. Let's talk dogs. All right, so they're all wolves. Yeah. So why are there different types of dogs? Why are they all wolves? Yeah, we've read them. How did that work? I mean, obviously it worked. What are wolves, dude?
I think one time.
You breed one with a moose or something? How'd that work? Yeah.
Little kids, like a backyard and woods and stuff, and they saw an itty-bitty wolf. Okay, listen. They're like, man, I want one of those as a pet. So what? I can't bring a wolf back home. So I'm gonna get this other wolf that looks like an animal I can take home. Okay, you put them together, and they brought it back home to his family.
You're not actually that off. So here's how it goes. Let's say we got a bunch of dogs, right? One, or rather wolves. One wolf is mean, I kill it. Not gonna deal with mean dogs. Or this wolf is nice and it's friendly and rolls around and scratches his belly, right? So this wolf is good with kids. I'm gonna have them play with my kids, no biggie. Alright, so I want more dogs that are good with kids, right? So I'm gonna find this other wolf that's also good with kids, and I'm gonna have them have little puppies. And we'll keep that line going on. So I have a big line that over time, I do this for centuries, because I want certain traits out of my dogs are going to develop certain characteristics. Think about it this way. If you take two Olympic athletes and they have babies, are their kids going to be Olympic athletes? Maybe, maybe not. But odds are good that they are going to inherit certain traits from their parents. If you keep that up for centuries, only breeding folks with specific strengths and weaknesses, things like that, hypothetically, you might be able to get somebody who is very, very strong. At least that's what Hitler thought. Whoa, that escalated quickly. So here's the thing, is when I talk about with animals, well, like, okay, that's cool. We haven't been that for centuries, right? That's how we have dogs, we have cows, we have different plants and animals that don't exist in nature. Let's get to bulldogs for just a second, okay? English bulldog, giant shoulder dog and things like that, really like a linebacker. They can't be born naturally. Their shoulders get stuck and basically kills both the puppy and the mother. Without us performing C-sections, allowing them both to survive, you wouldn't have that breed. They would have died off. Okay? They would not exist in nature without our interference. That's called artificial selection. We have had a hand in selecting what is what. Natural selection, and by the way, we know that's irrefutably true. We can see it every single day. Artificial selection is commonplace. Natural selection is the theory that evolution is all about. Basically the idea that nature punishes those who cannot survive, those who are not hardy, those that are not able to adapt. Think about it this way. Life is trying to constantly kill you.
Your wife?
Nature's life, not my wife. Yes, at our house it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There's down there. No, life. If you think about it, you constantly have all kinds of challenges to deal with. You have starvation, you have wild animals, you have all kinds of things that are vying for your attention, except you don't have to worry about it in our society because someone else does it for you. Yes? Okay, that's our specialized society. But if you were just out there in the environment by yourself, well, maybe, unless you can deal. You know what I mean? Survival of the fittest. The animal that is best able to survive will do so and live long enough to pass on its genes, which will then be born to the next generation and so on and so forth. Those that aren't as adapted will die. Consider this. If you've ever been about nature and seen as things start to turn to winter, you'll see all the various leaves and bushes, things like that, stripped. Deer, all kinds of other animals come and eat everything off every tree that's accessible. So animals that have a small neck, animals that can't reach very high and get the little tasty bits in the top of trees, things like that, they might not be able to get enough to eat. They can't eat, they die. They starve to death. So the animals that are taller will survive. They pass on their traits and generation. So after this years of happening, all the small critters die out and only the big ones remain. Because they can always have enough food, the little ones don't. Does that make sense? That's natural selection. It doesn't mean that the animal has evolved. It's not like, I hate that word. I understand it's evolution. It's explaining this over millennia. But the idea I think people have is like, somebody throws a Pokeball at something. It's like, yeah, it's mutating. It doesn't happen in real life. And everyone's like, hey, Mr. Mudd, it's not a Pokeball that causes evolution. It's stones. You're a nerd if you get that joke. Well done. Anyways, moving on. I see the looking around. I see it. Atomic theory. Basically, the theory that what? Atomic? Yeah. You're going to say that the universe and all matter and everything in it is made of little tiny bits of stuff called atoms. We'll get to racism. Whoa. It's getting real.
Is all this going to be on the test for the quiz tomorrow?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it can be. I'm not guaranteeing I haven't made it. Yes, you do. You have. So you'd be like, what? I'd be like, oh, you defeated my plan. What's psychology?
The study of the way a person thinks.
And? That's half of it. So, Behavior. Yeah, how you got it? Right. Leave that in a second. Let's talk racism. Everyone's a little bit racist. What is racism? Well, those are all maybe examples of racism, but what is racism? Like, how can we define this? Yes, ma'am.
It's the hate based off of ethnicity or.
Interesting. So it's hate, is it? Okay. Can I be racist in a positive way?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
That's kind of like just being curious.
Like so.
There's a word for that, but I don't know what it is.
You can
So-
totally say they're good at something, you know.
Yeah, so like, you know how all those Asian kids are great at math and science.
It's a stereotype, isn't it?
It is. We're saying all black people are good at athletics. You know what I'm saying? It's racist. It doesn't matter. That's positive. You are basing an attribute solely on someone's race. You know, all Native Americans are drunks.
I never that.
Or that one, that's a common one. Ask your parents. Actually, don't ask your parents. Well, here on YouTube, hey-o. But no, I can tell you, I'm part Irish, I'm part Cherokee, so you know, I've got stereotypes for drunks on two sides of the family. I've heard it before. But anyways, you had a question, comment, concern. So racism is the thing that's most bad about racism is how it marginalizes people into stereotypes. Basically, it reduces everything about them to just, well, you must follow this stereotype because of, you know, like, what do you mean, you know? You know?
Basically stereotyping people, is that the definition?
Well, no. Racism is when you base interact, or there's actually a definition about this. The first part's drawn on me. Basically, it's wherever you drop everything else about somebody and focus only on the racial aspects. Okay. For instance, you can have discrimination, which is what we tend to focus on, by the way. Where, you know, for instance, I'm not going to hire someone because they are X race, whatever race it is. You know, that's the form of discrimination. It's racial discrimination. By the way, I can go beyond race too. I can say, I'm not going to hire you because you're a woman. Ooh, gender discrimination. I'm not going to hire you because you are too young. Age discrimination. For you guys, it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of how, because I mean, think about it, you guys deal with it all the time. But what if I reverse it and say, like, you're too old, I'm not hiring you? Or the more common happening is you're fired. Why? You're too old. Which is illegal, by the way. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it's probably not a rule, but I know like a lot of like Walmart and all them, they try to like hire a lot of races.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why.
Well, there are actually rules about you can't have all of this one race. You know, on one hand, it's like, well, shouldn't you just be able to hire whoever you want? Yeah, here's the thing, is people use that as an excuse not to hire people with specific races. You know.
What if only one race would apply?
Well, yeah, that is true, which makes it difficult. The fact of the matter is, how likely is that to actually happen in this country? It's so little as to be like non-existent.
So say
Is it fair? Is the question we're getting to. Is it fair for me as a company to have to hire someone that is of a race because I don't have someone of that race working? No, it's not. But here's the thing is, you guys know what group of people have the most problems with poverty in the United States? What group of people are the most poor? No, African American. You know what the second group is? Women. Yeah. And you know why? Because for generations, it was perfectly socially acceptable to hire someone based on race and gender. If you take that away, over time, it becomes unnecessary. But we're still not there yet. Women are getting there. There's still a lot of problems, when it comes to making certain that folks have an equal opportunity to have that opportunity. Opportunity, sometimes we have this idea in America that the opportunity will just come to you. It's like, I'm just going to be lucky. Things are going to work out for me. That doesn't happen. It almost never happens. The idea that someone can just walk off the street and become rich and become incredibly successful is technically possible, but also very, 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 very unlikely. Think about how many people go to California every single year because they want to be movie stars, versus how many actually succeed. The thing that's truly kind of humbling about this, I feel, is that whenever you see very successful people, if I say, follow your dreams, do whatever you want to do. It worked for me. Yeah, it worked for them, but how many people does it not work for? I'm saying the vast majority, yeah? So is it fair? No, but it shouldn't be either. Life is not fair. If that makes any sense. Again, stuff we talked about in sociology. It's all coming out of the seams today. If you feel slightly uncomfortable having this conversation too, that's perfectly understandable and normal. It's always kind of a weird thing to talk about race, especially as it applies, but it's also incredibly important to understand. For my next point, talking about social Darwinism. Okay? Social Darwinism is the idea of taking Darwin's theory about evolution one step farther and applying it to civilizations. So let's see this. Darwin said the species that survived are superior. Okay? So let's take that and apply to societies. The civilizations that survived, that conquered, were racially superior. Does that start to sound a bit creepy to you? Just think about it this way. If they're inferior, then they're taking up space that we should have for our greater civilization, so let's kill them all. That's exactly what Hitler used as his rationalization. It's what the folks did in the Congo. It spread all around the world. The worst abuses of human rights, the most horrible tragedies to ever face the human condition were caused by this mentality. This ideology that some people are better suited because they are genetically superior. Guys, if you've done any study into the Holocaust, you'll know that Hitler was all about race, racial pride, all this sort of stuff, nationalism, German nationalism. You often hear the blonde-haired, blue-eyed thing, It doesn't mean you want everyone to be blind or blue-eyed. That's what he's talking about. What he's talking about his traits. What physical traits were common amongst the superior race of men who used to be unsullied, unmuddied by the lesser races of people. This also is a great example of Harry Potter, by the way. The mudbloods. Yeah. So this attitude we're going to talk about as we get to because it became widespread during this age of empire. Okay? Any comments or concerns? You guys, the state got real, Then the human attacked somebody. We talked about ice cream. We're talking about racism. Oh my goodness. Much wow. Okay? You good? Solid? Fantastic? All right. That's it.